The Cleveland Browns just made it official. Shadur Sanders is starting at quarterback this Sunday. But what's not official, at least not yet, is the chaos that's been boiling behind the scenes and the shocking way this entire situation has unfolded. You've probably seen the headlines. Rookie QB thrown into the fire. Unprepared. Unreliable. But here's the part they're not telling you. What happened to Shadur Sanders wasn't just a rookie mistake. It wasn't just bad luck. According to one NFL insider, it might have been something far worse, something deliberate. We're talking about a scandal so bizarre, you'd think it was pulled from a scripted series. Offensive linemen didn't know the rookie quarterback's cadence. Receivers weren't running routes timed to his throws. And behind all of it? A coach with a shocking history of burning through quarterbacks at a rate almost unheard of in the modern NFL. But that's just scratching the surface. Because when you dig deeper, you don't find a young quarterback who wasn't ready. You find an organization that never bothered to prepare him. And when you look back at what's happened in Cleveland over the last few years, it starts to paint a much darker picture, one that has fans and analysts asking the same uncomfortable question: was Shadur Sanders actually set up to fail? On purpose? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're not just going to have a different view of the Cleveland Browns. You might just start to think, there's something seriously broken inside this team, and it's not just the quarterback. From the moment Shadur Sanders declared for the NFL draft, there was never going to be a smooth transition. Unlike most college quarterbacks entering the league, Shedeur wasn't just coming in with stats and a scouting report. He was stepping into the spotlight with a legacy attached to his last name and a media circus in his shadow. He wasn't just a rookie, he was Deion Sanders' son. And in the world of professional football, that means everything: the hype, the pressure, the skepticism, the cameras. Every move he made was going to be watched, questioned, and dissected not just for what it was, but because of who his father is. Shedeur didn't come from anonymity. He grew up under the lights, with cameras following him before he could legally drive. High school at Trinity Christian, national spotlight, then Jackson State, where he played for his dad and set program records. Then his electric, controversial jump to Colorado again with Deion at the helm. He wasn't just playing football. He was the headline. And no matter what he did, supporters and critics were locked into two extremes. He was either the next big thing or completely overrated. The Cleveland Browns knew exactly what they were getting when they selected Shedeur in the 3rd round. They weren't blindsided by the scrutiny. They invited it. Because picking Shedeur didn't just bring in a quarterback, it brought in the conversation. It brought media attention, jersey sales, and narratives. Whether you loved him or couldn't stand him, you were watching him. But here's where everything started to go sideways. From the very beginning, the Browns seemed strangely uncommitted to Shedeur's development. You'd expect a team bringing in a high-profile rookie quarterback to have a specific plan in place, an approach, a timeline, a roadmap. But in Cleveland, it felt almost like an afterthought. Training camp came, and Shedeur wasn't just passed over for the starting role, he was locked out of first-team opportunities. Every rep, every package, every key drill with the ones went to Dillon Gabriel. On paper, it made sense. Gabriel was the starter, so naturally, he got the bulk of the work. But behind that logic, something didn't add up. Because in the NFL, especially in today's game, smart teams prepare their backups. They know that one injury, one bad hit, one twisted ankle, and you're down to QB2. So teams treat backups as essential, not optional. They give them limited but crucial reps with the starters. They make sure they're synced up with receivers. They reinforce timing, cadence, communication. The margin of error in football is razor thin, and unprepared backups cost you games. But the Browns didn't do any of that. They didn't just limit Shedeur's reps with the first team, they completely cut him out from it. No packages, no situational drills, no real-time exposure to the offense at full speed. He was operating almost entirely in isolation, working with practice squad players and third-string linemen, treated more like a project than the team's potential future. There were no bridge-building sessions with the offensive line, no chemistry work with the starting wideouts, not even cadence drills to get everyone on the same rhythm. It was as if the Browns brought him in and then chose to pretend he was never really part of the plan. And here's the part that makes this feel less like a mistake and more like a calculated decision. This wasn't a late-round flyer. This was a 3rd-round pick, the kind of choice you make when you're seriously betting on potential. This wasn't a hidden gem pulled from obscurity. This was one of the most talked about college quarterbacks in the country, with one of the biggest platforms in sports, and Cleveland treated him like a UDFA just trying to stick around. That choice, that deliberate lack of development, set the tone for everything that followed. Because in football, it's not just about who's on the roster. It's about who you invest in, who you prepare, who you build around. And from day one in Cleveland, the Browns made it clear that Shadur Sanders would be seen but not heard. He'd be present but not prepared. Now, zoom out for a second. Imagine being that 1-year-old rookie entering one of the harshest professional environments in all of sports, carrying every expectation and every ounce of pressure that comes with being Deion Sanders' son, and realizing that the very system you were drafted into doesn't believe in you. That they brought you in not to compete, not to grow, but to sit quietly in the corner until an injury forced their hand. That's not development. That's sabotage. And it raises the first major question we have to ask in this story. Why did the Browns draft Shadur Sanders? If they were never going to give him a real shot? In the NFL, the difference between success and disaster comes down to one word: preparation. Every team in the league knows it. And when it comes to quarterbacks, especially young, unproven ones, that preparation becomes everything. So, let's get something straight right now. What happened in Cleveland with Shadur Sanders isn't normal. In fact, it breaks almost every rule that competent NFL teams live by. Across the league, backup quarterbacks aren't treated like afterthoughts. They're treated like ticking time bombs because everyone knows that at some point, they're going to play. Whether it's an injury, a benching, or just plain old unpredictability, the guy standing just behind the starter on the depth chart has to be ready to go, especially when your team's offensive line is shaky, especially when your starter like Dillon Gabriel has taken more hits than most QBs should, and especially when your team has postseason aspirations. That's why NFL teams, at every level, go out of their way to make sure their backup quarterbacks are synced with the starting offense. It's not about equal reps, it's about meaningful reps. That means cadence work with the offensive line, situational drills with first-team receivers, 2-minute drills, red zone sets, play-action timing, targeted packages that match your backup's unique play style. Why? Because football doesn't come with warning signs. There's no get-ready note from the injury gods when your starter limps off the field. Guys go down, sometimes in brutal fashion, and teams either adapt or they collapse. Except in Cleveland, they didn't adapt. They didn't even bother getting ready. When training camp opened, all of the first-team snaps were given to Gabriel. And yes, he's the starter that makes sense on paper, but it becomes a problem when it turns into an exclusive relationship. Shadur Sanders wasn't just sitting behind Gabriel on the depth chart, he was cut off from the starting offense entirely. No live reps, no chemistry development, no packages tailored to his strengths, no offensive linemen learning his cadence, no receivers adjusting to his timing. He wasn't preparing to be the next quarterback up. He was preparing for nothing. And if that sounds insane to you, it should, because it's the exact opposite of how quarterback development is supposed to work in the NFL. Talk to any former player, any coach, any analyst who's been around a healthy football organization, they'll all tell you the same thing. You prepare your backup like he's one play away. Because he is. You let your starters build their rhythm, sure, but you carve out time for your backup to step in for just a few plays here and there to keep everyone familiar. A few possessions in joint practices, targeted drives during preseason games, progression work with route trees, silent count reps with the offensive line. All of it matters. None of that happened in Cleveland, and it wasn't because Shedeur was some no-name rookie trying to beat out veterans. It wasn't because he was low on the depth chart and not expected to contribute. He was the clear number 2. He was one bad hit to Gabriel, away from being this team's quarterback. And everyone knew that. And yet, nothing. And then the moment happened. Gabriel went down with a concussion. The Browns had no choice but to throw Shedeur into live action against Baltimore, one of the most aggressive, complex defenses in the league. And what happened? Chaos, dysfunction, total collapse. People looked at what happened and said, he's not ready, he's overhyped, typical nepotism pick. But that's the lazy analysis. That's the kind of take you make when you're reading box scores instead of watching what actually happened on the field. Because here are the facts. When Shedeur stepped under center, his offensive line literally didn't know his cadence. That's not metaphorical. That's not a technicality. It's a direct quote from multiple Cleveland offensive linemen after the game. They admitted it publicly. They didn't know when the snap was coming. They didn't know his rhythm. They were completely out of sync, not because they're bad players, but because they were never given the chance to get in sync in the first place. Do you realize how rare that is? Every NFL backup, even the guys buried in third string, at least gets walk-through snaps with the top unit. They get film study reps, they get scout team work, they get basic communication drilled into them. Shedeur got none of that. And you can see it in the results. Missed timing, dropped protections, late throws, confusion at the line. It was all the symptoms of one diagnosis: a quarterback trying to operate an offense that wasn't calibrated for him at all. And this wasn't just a training staff oversight or a chaotic game week decision. This was a months-long failure, a deliberate lack of investment. The Browns had full OTAs, a long training camp, multiple preseason games, and they refused to prepare their backup quarterback for real NFL football. So let's be clear, his failure in Baltimore wasn't talent-related. It wasn't pressure, and it wasn't nerves. It was pure organizational negligence, and it begs a very obvious question. Why? Why would a team take a high-profile rookie quarterback, bring him into one of the most hostile media environments in sports, and then not prepare him to play? Was it arrogance? Was it politics? Or something even deeper? Because if this wasn't a mistake, it starts to look a lot like sabotage. When it finally happened, it didn't feel like a moment of opportunity. It felt like a setup. Just over halfway through a brutal game against the Baltimore Ravens, Dillon Gabriel took a violent hit and went down. Concussion protocols kicked in. And suddenly, whether the Browns were ready or not, Shadur Sanders was in. Except the word ready doesn't even belong in that sentence. Because what unfolded over the next few drives wasn't just the typical rookie growing pains. It was a complete system-wide breakdown that no quarterback rookie or veteran could have succeeded in. And it came with all the symptoms of a team that had zero contingency plan for this moment, even though literally everyone saw it coming. Let's talk about what really happened in those snaps before the box score misleads you. Yes, Shedeur went 4 for 1-6 passing. That's a headline stat that sounds awful. But stats don't always tell the story, especially not in this case. Because when you go back and watch the film, and we mean really break it down, something becomes immediately clear. Shedeur wasn't playing quarterback, he was dodging landmines. On more than half of the plays he dropped back, he had defenders crashing into the backfield before he even had a chance to plant his foot. There were moments where he hadn't completed his 3-step drop before the pocket was already collapsing. You could see it in real-time receivers just starting to break off their routes while Shedeur was running for his life. And remember, this wasn't a defense guessing at his timing, this was a defense exploiting it. Because the offensive line didn't just struggle, they looked completely disoriented. Why? Because as several of them admitted after the game, they didn't even know his cadence. The 5 guys whose entire job is to protect the quarterback didn't know when he was going to snap the ball. Let that sink in. That's not a rookie mistake. That's not a lack of talent. That's malpractice. Now layer that onto the route timing of the receivers. Cleveland's wideouts had spent the last several months building chemistry with Gabriel. His game is built on quick timing throws, short crossers, fast rhythm routes. That's how the playbook was structured. Hit the break point, turn your head, the ball should already be in the air. Shadur's style? Completely different. He's not a one-read-and-go passer. He's deliberate. He holds the ball longer, he surveys the field, he waits for plays to develop. It's not slow, it's strategic. His deep game patience at Colorado was a huge part of what made him such a draw. But that approach needs time 3 to 4 solid seconds of protection and receivers working into space. That's not what this system gave him. Instead, the route trees were designed for a 2-second release. Receivers were breaking early, defensive backs were jumping the first move. And with no timing, no rhythm, and no rep-based trust between Shadur and the offensive unit, he was left standing in chaos. Here's the truth no one wants to say out loud: Shedeur wasn't running an offense. He was surviving a trap. And still, he delivered a few throws that showed exactly why he was drafted. A sideline laser while being hit. A perfectly placed ball that glanced off a tight end's fingertips. He nearly connected on 2 long plays that were just inches from big gains, both of which would have changed the tone of the entire game. But most fans didn't care about near completions. All they saw was 4 for 1-6. All they heard from pundits was, "He's not ready." And that's exactly the narrative the Browns let grow unchecked. But stop and ask yourself, how could he have been ready? How do you expect a rookie quarterback to enter an NFL game cold, with no first-team timing, no chemistry, no designed packages, and no cadence work, and look like a polished weapon off the bench? This wasn't a failure of execution, it was a failure of preparation, and the implications are massive. Because this didn't just impact one player. A mistake this huge affects the whole team. The offensive rhythm was shattered. The receivers were second-guessing their cuts. The protection completely fell apart. And instead of adjusting the plan, Cleveland's coaching staff just kept calling calls designed for Gabriel, not Shedeur. They didn't change the tempo. They didn't shift to rollouts. They didn't tweak protection reads. They didn't adapt, which is what every elite coaching staff does when their backup quarterback steps in. Now, maybe you chalk this up to inexperience. Maybe you assume the Browns froze under pressure, but remember, this coaching staff is led by Kevin Stefanski, a two-time NFL Coach of the Year. These aren't rookies. They're not new to chaos. They've had every chance to learn from the past, especially when it comes to developing quarterbacks, which only raises more pressing questions. Was this level of unpreparedness just negligence? Did they think Shedeur would never play? Or worst case, was there never a plan to actually develop him? Because Shedeur's debut didn't just expose how badly things can go wrong when you don't plan. It exposed a pattern, one that will only look worse as we keep unpacking how Stefanski has handled quarterbacks during his time in Cleveland. Baltimore was a failure, but not because Shedeur wasn't ready, because the Browns never gave him a chance to be. If you think what happened to Shadur Sanders was just a one-time screw-up, think again. Because once you zoom out and take a look at the broader pattern, the picture gets even darker. Since Kevin Stefanski became head coach of the Cleveland Browns in 2020, 13 different quarterbacks have started a game under his watch. Let that number sink in for a second. 13. In just 5 seasons. That's not normal. That's not even bad luck. That's dysfunction at a historic level. Let's run through that list. Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum, Nick Mullins, Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett, Joe Flacco, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jeff Driscoll, Jameis Winston, Bailey Zapp, Dylan Gabriel, and now, Shadur Sanders. That's not a quarterback room, that's a full-blown carousel. And before anyone tries to defend it by saying, well, injuries happen, keep this in mind. Plenty of teams suffer QB injuries. Very few completely destroy every quarterback that steps on their field. Cleveland, under Stefanski, is where quarterback development goes to die. Think about Baker Mayfield, drafted #1 overall, showed flashes of real promise, tore apart Pittsburgh in the playoffs. 4 years later, Stefanski pulls the plug, sends him packing. Now, Mayfield's thriving in Tampa Bay. He's managing games efficiently, making smart decisions, and doing exactly what Cleveland wished he'd done for them. So was he really the problem, or was he never developed properly? Now look at Jacoby Brissett, the ultimate professional backup. He filled in last year in multiple spots across the league and looked solid, reliable, serviceable. But in Cleveland, his production was inconsistent. Why? Same issue one week, he's managed well. The next week, the offense feels like it forgot he exists. Then there's Joe Flacco, the veteran pulled off the couch, sent onto the field in pure desperation, and had a moment. For a short stretch, he looked shockingly efficient in Cleveland's offense. But the second things shifted, the wheels came off again. So what's going on here? Because if every quarterback struggles inside your system, the common denominator isn't the quarterbacks. It's the system. It's the coaching. It's the guy who's in charge of creating the conditions for success and failing repeatedly. And that brings us right back to Stefanski. Now look, Stefanski isn't some bottom-tier coach hanging on by a thread. He's won NFL Coach of the Year twice. He's been called a brilliant game planner. His offensive schemes get praise across the league. And on paper, he looks like the kind of guy who should be the future of the franchise. But paper lies. Because when your resume says offensive genius, but your quarterback room is in constant shambles, you have to ask, where is the disconnect? It's not about play design, it's about something deeper: player development. And that's exactly where everything in Cleveland seems to unravel. His system might be clever. It might work well with quarterbacks who already know what they're doing. But when it comes to building up young talent, giving them structure, investing time, and developing a quarterback from raw potential into a franchise cornerstone, Stefanski has failed. Every time. And that's not just a coaching flaw, it's a team-building flaw. Because every great organization in today's NFL builds around quarterbacks. They grow their own. They build infrastructure around that position from day one. KC did it with Mahomes. Philly did it with Hurts. San Francisco did it with Brock Purdy. Even teams like Houston are doing it now with CJ Stroud. But in Cleveland, the pattern is brutal. A quarterback comes in. He's either misused, ignored, or plugged into a system that doesn't fit his strengths. Then he struggles, gets replaced, and the cycle repeats. And this is where Shedur's situation starts to feel eerily familiar. He's the 13th quarterback in 5 seasons, an absurd number that tells you this isn't just about one draft, or one player, or one bad week. It's systematic, and you have to ask, what exactly is Stefanski doing with his quarterbacks? Because each failed QB is a red flag that this system, no matter how creative it looks on a chalkboard, isn't working in real life, with real people. So here's the question. If Stefanski couldn't figure it out with Baker, if he let Brissett plateau, if even Flacco couldn't save it all last year, what chance did Shedeur ever really have? When you look at the pattern, something ugly starts to emerge. Cleveland doesn't just struggle with quarterbacks, they waste them. They bring them in, drown them in schemes they're not ready for, give them no time to adjust, strip them of what makes them unique, then act surprised when the results implode. And just like that, another QB becomes part of the body count. Shadur Sanders wasn't just thrown into a game, he was thrown into a machine that's been breaking quarterbacks for 5 straight years. And unless someone inside the organization is brave enough to admit that the system itself is the problem, history is about to repeat itself once again. By now, you've seen the signs, the underpreparation, the inconsistent messaging, the quarterback chaos. But what if the inconsistencies surrounding Shadur Sanders aren't just about poor planning, and instead point towards something intentional? Because according to multiple NFL insiders, including some voices with direct ties to team staff, front office executives, and league personnel, there's more going on in Cleveland than we've been led to believe. And it's not just mismanagement, it's dysfunction. Deep internal strategic-level dysfunction. Behind the scenes, sources say the Browns are dealing with a fundamental divide, 2 competing visions of the team's direction, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. On one side, the front office, led by General Manager Andrew Berry and franchise ownership. On the other, Kevin Stefanski and his coaching staff, running things from the field level. At the heart of this internal clash, Shadur Sanders. Let's rewind for a second. The Browns front office reportedly saw Shedeur as a sleeper pick with serious long-term upside, a mobile quarterback with elite arm talent, huge college experience, and above all, star power. Drafting him in the 3rd round wasn't just a football decision, it was a business decision too. He brought buzz, visibility, a chance to inject energy into a franchise that's otherwise been stuck in a loop of mediocrity and disappointment. But buzz isn't the same as buy-in, and by all accounts, the coaching staff wasn't on board. Multiple league insiders, including Peter Schrager and former NFL scouts turned analysts, have hinted at philosophical disagreements between Stefanski's offense and what Shedeur brings to the table. Translation? Stefanski didn't want Shedeur. Or worse, he wanted to prove a point, and here's why that matters. Because if the coach didn't believe in the quarterback the front office drafted, then everything that happened during camp suddenly makes a lot more sense. The reps Shedeur didn't get, the cadence work that never happened, the lack of chemistry with the starters, the playbook that didn't fit his style at all. It starts to feel less like accidental neglect and more like a quiet protest, a power struggle, a subtle way for the coaching side of the building to send a message. You picked this guy? Fine, he's your problem. And that's where this theory starts to get dangerous, because in the NFL, when the coaching staff and the front office aren't aligned, everything falls apart. Development stalls. Young players get caught in the crossfire, and quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks, pay the price. But we're not done yet. Sources have also started whispering about something even uglier. Something no one really wants to say out loud, but it's out there now. And fans are picking up on it. Could Shadur Sanders be facing bias inside the organization not just because he's a rookie, but because he's Deion Sanders' son? Let's be honest, Deion is one of the most electrifying, polarizing forces in all of sports. He dominates headlines even when he's not trying. His social media presence, his charisma, his brashness, his unwillingness to play politics in a world filled with egos and hierarchies. And that kind of spotlight, It doesn't always endear you to NFL coaches and front office lifers, especially the old school types who prefer their rookies quiet, humble, and invisible behind the scenes. You're not above the system, you're not above the team. I don't care who your father is. Is that the energy Shedeur walked into when he arrived in Cleveland? Because based on how he's been treated, so far ignored in camp, thrown into disaster unprepared, and then immediately labeled a failure, it's feeling a lot like he was never given a blank slate at all. And let's be clear, we're not saying there's some conspiracy inside the Browns to destroy Shedeur's career, but sometimes sabotage isn't loud, it's not written down, it's subtle. It looks like indifference. It sounds like we didn't think he'd need the reps. It hides behind decision-making that's just plausible enough to seem reasonable until you see the outcome. And the outcome doesn't lie. No support, no reps, no preparation, no plan. Whether it was political, personal, or philosophical, it all led to one thing: a rookie quarterback being publicly embarrassed in his first ever NFL moment, while the people responsible stood back and shrugged. So the real question becomes, why draft a player if you have no intention of developing him? Was the front office overruled? Did Stefanski want his guy to win the job no matter what? Was this a silent, burn it down to prove a point moment from the coaching staff? Or was this personal? Because let's not ignore how powerful narrative is in the NFL. Coaches don't just want wins, they want credit. They want to be seen as the architect behind a quarterback's success. And if that quarterback shows up with his own brand, his father's shadow, and a camera crew already following him around, sometimes it's easier to let him fall than help him fly. And that's why what's happening in Cleveland right now feels different. It's not just about poor performance. It's about politics behind closed doors. It's about agendas clashing mid-season. It's about a franchise that brought in talent and then refused to pull the trigger on believing in it. And if Shedeur proves them wrong, everything inside that building is going to get exposed. Sometimes it takes disaster to force change. That seems to be the only reason Shadur Sanders is finally getting the kind of preparation every NFL backup should have had months ago. After the public embarrassment against Baltimore, the narrative shifted quickly. Suddenly, the same Cleveland Browns coaching staff that left him in the dark was now talking about building cohesion, tailoring the offense, and preparing him for success. Now that Dillon Gabriel is in concussion protocol and Shedeur's next start is guaranteed, now they care. Now he's getting a full week of first-team reps. Now the offensive line is drilling his cadence. Now the route timing is synced to his dropbacks. Film study is finally specific to his tendencies. Play calling is being built with his strengths in mind, not Gabriel's. It's the energy they should have brought the moment he was drafted, the belief they should have shown when he arrived. And honestly, it's hard not to wonder, where was all of this before the train already went off the tracks? Because if they had done this from the beginning, if Stefanski and company had given Shedeur even half the preparation he needed, Baltimore could have played out completely differently. Instead of being humiliated on national TV, maybe he holds his own. Maybe he thrives. Maybe the conversation around him sounds a lot more like franchise future and a lot less like not ready. But here's the thing. In the NFL, timing is everything, and this belated course correction doesn't come without consequences. The damage has already started. Internally, trust is fractured. Externally, perception is brutal. The media has already dug its claws into the "is he a bust" story. Fans are divided. Analysts are debating. The microscope is locked in, and there's no room left for mistakes. Which means this week against the Las Vegas Raiders becomes something it was never supposed to be for a rookie backup quarterback. A defining moment. A career crossroad. On early, premature Judgment Day. He's walking into this game with the weight of a franchise on his shoulders and the clock already ticking. If he plays poorly, the Cleveland media will eat him alive. National outlets will run with the overhyped son of a superstar narrative. And most dangerously, the organization may start quietly pivoting behind the scenes. Because here's what the Browns have in front of them. 2 first-round picks in the upcoming NFL draft. That gives them serious positioning power. They could move up to take any top-tier quarterback on the board. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Quinn Ewers, Michael Penix Jr., whoever shakes loose, Cleveland can go get them if they want to. And if they even think Shedeur isn't the guy, they'll use one of those picks or both to replace him, which raises the stakes astronomically because Shadur Sanders isn't just fighting for a win, he's fighting for his NFL future. Right now, everything he worked for, everything he proved at Jackson State, then at Colorado, everything that brought him to this moment could be gone in 8 games. 8. That's what the Browns are giving him. Not a season, not a development arc, just 8 weeks to win over an entire building that already failed him once. But this time, something is different. This time, Shedeur knows. He knows the lights are on. He knows the trap has already been sprung. He knows he's not stepping into a system built for him. He's being given a test he wasn't supposed to survive, and this is his only chance to flip the script. He's been waiting for this not just since the draft, but his entire life. He's used to the pressure. He's used to the cameras, the critics, the doubts. But even for someone raised in the fire of scrutiny, this is unprecedented. Because this game, this next stretch, they're playing for a playoff spot. This isn't a tanking team letting their rookie get experience. This is a win-now roster. And the message from the front office is clear. Be the guy, right now, or we'll find someone else who can. And that voice? It's louder in Cleveland than almost anywhere. So yes, they've finally started preparing him. They're drilling cadence. They're building schemes. They're adjusting plays. On the surface, it looks like support. But deep down, you have to wonder if it's already too late. Because you don't unring the bell. You don't erase national embarrassment. You don't fix an off-season of neglect with a single week of focused attention. Maybe Shadur rises above it. Maybe he shocks everyone. Maybe he plays like the quarterback he was born to be and makes this team rethink everything. But if he doesn't, this story won't end with just another quarterback setback. It will end with everyone asking the question nobody in the Browns building wants to answer. What if Shadur Sanders could have made it? If only they actually gave him a chance. Shadur Sanders isn't just battling through his own NFL nightmare, he's playing out a story we've seen too many times before. A young quarterback enters the league with potential, hype, maybe even a flash of greatness, only to get swallowed by the exact system that was supposed to shape him. And Cleveland? It's just the latest scene in a recurring script. Because here's the part no one likes to admit. The NFL is filled with talent, but not every team knows what to do with it. Too often, teams don't just fail to develop quarterbacks, they actively destroy them. Let's talk about Josh Rosen. Drafted 10th overall by the Arizona Cardinals. Big arm, UCLA star, projected franchise leader. And after just 1 season, the Cardinals tossed him aside like yesterday's news. He didn't get support. He barely had protection. The offense was a disaster, and by year 2, they'd already moved on, taking Kyler Murray #1 overall and shipping Rosen off as an afterthought. Now you'll hear that Rosen wasn't that good, and maybe that's true, but tell the full story. The Cardinals gave him 1 season with one of the worst rosters in football and offered virtually no runway to do what rookie quarterbacks need most: grow. Once labeled a bust, Rosen bounced around the league practice squads, inactive rosters, no stability, never allowed to truly earn or evolve into anything. Then there's Sam Darnold, taken 3rd overall by the New York Jets, walked into a teardown. Different offensive coordinators, different head coaches, no real weapons, no pass protection, and 0 identity as an offense. Fans called him a turnover machine. The media gave up on him almost instantly. But interestingly, every time he went to a new team, the flashes came back. Strong arm, pocket poise, better play under the right conditions. Not saying he's elite, but he was never given the foundation to become what he could have been. And that's the point. The NFL has more failed systems than failed quarterbacks. Guys who could have been something, if only they landed in the right place, at the right time, with coaches who understood how to build not just scheme. We watch talented college QBs get drafted into chaos year after year, and everyone acts surprised when they flame out. But it's not a mystery. It's not about arm strength or IQ or it factor. It's about infrastructure, support, coaching continuity, tailored playbooks, patience, reps with the first team, cadence training with the line, preparedness for the moment. All of the things Shadur Sanders was explicitly denied when he arrived in Cleveland. So now you have to ask yourself, how many other Shadur Sanders type players have come and gone quarterbacks we never truly got to see because the systems around them boxed them out before their careers even began? How many were labeled busts, not because they couldn't play, but because certain teams never planned for them to succeed in the first place? And this isn't just happening to unknown prospects. This happens to top-tier names. Zach Wilson walked into a Jets organization that had no offensive identity, no stability, and no answers, turned from savior to scapegoat in under 2 seasons. Justin Fields spent his rookie year in Chicago under Matt Nagy's outdated scheme, running plays designed for someone else while getting hit from every angle. By the time the Bears finally started adjusting the offense to fit Justin's strengths, the fan base had already turned. Trey Lance, drafted 3rd overall by San Francisco, barely got time to prove anything. First buried, then hurt, then quickly forgotten once Brock Purdy shined. Now, he's a backup in Dallas, sitting behind 2 other QBs who weren't even in the 49ers' plans 2 years ago. It keeps happening over and over. Because the NFL isn't just survival of the fittest, it's survival of the least dysfunctional environment. And for every Mahomes, Hurts, and Herbert that gets drafted into stability, there are 3 or 4 others buried under chaos, bad game plans, conflicting agendas, and impatient fan bases. Shadur Sanders is standing right on that edge. The edge that decides whether he walks the path of a resurrected breakout or falls into the same pit that swallowed countless QBs before him. And the worst part? We won't be talking about any of this if he fails. If he stumbles against the Raiders, if he looks average down the stretch, the narrative won't focus on the lack of reps, the missing preparation, the non-existent support structure. It will just say, he wasn't good enough. End of story. But now you know better. Now you know what's really on the line here. Shedur's fight isn't just about making the throws. It's about beating the machine that's already chewing at his career before it even starts. And if he can break through, his success will say less about him as a pure quarterback and more about what happens when a player is finally given a real chance. We've seen the chaos. We've seen the missteps, the speculation, the isolation of a rookie quarterback thrown to the wolves. But now, it all comes down to this: 8 games. That's the window Shadur Sanders has to rewrite the entire story. Not just about himself, not just about his ability to lead an NFL offense, but about the Cleveland Browns' future as a franchise and whether anyone inside that building actually knows how to develop a quarterback. Because make no mistake, this is an audition, and not just for a starting job. This is an audition for belief, for trust, for identity. The same organization that gave up on Baker Mayfield watched Jacoby Brissett leave, shuffled through 13 different starters in 5 years, and mishandled Shedur's entrance into the league now wants him to prove, in 8 games, that he's the solution they've been searching for all along. It's insane, but also completely real. And here's the kicker: this assessment isn't happening in a development year or a rebuild. The Browns are trying to win right now. Veteran roster, high expectations, 2 first-round picks in the 2025 draft, a quarterback-friendly market. They're not waiting around to see what might work in 2026. They want answers. Fast. So for Shedeur, every single snap matters now. Every throw, every read, every decision is going to be dissected, praised, or ripped apart by media, fans, and most importantly, decision makers who've already proven their willingness to move on quickly. Because here's what's at stake beyond the box scores. If Shadur succeeds not in perfection, but in poise, command, growth, he changes the narrative completely. He silences the critics who said his name got him drafted. He proves his ability was always the reason he belonged. He forces this franchise to finally build around someone instead of running from failure. But if he falters even just enough to make people hesitate, then Cleveland will start doing what Cleveland always does. They hit reset. With 2 first-round picks incoming, the Browns could easily package those and jump up in the draft to take another shiny new name, another QB to throw into the fire. Another cycle of hope, hype, and hurry-up failure. And Shedeur? He risks joining a long list of quarterbacks who weren't bad. They were just discarded before they had a real shot. That's what makes this next stretch so brutal. He's not just competing against defenses, he's competing against time, bias, and a franchise wired to move on before the paint even dries. We're watching a man try to earn a future inside an organization that has already failed him once. If this sounds unfair, it is. If it sounds impossible, ask Brock Purdy. Ask Jalen Hurts. Ask Geno Smith, who waited a decade for belief. That's what this game does. And for the Browns? These 8 games don't just define Shedur's future, they define theirs. If he blossoms into something real, they'll look like the team that pulled off one of the most unlikely quarterback resurrection stories in years. They'll be called smart, resilient, willing to learn. But if they mishandle this again, if they push him out the door without owning their role in his struggles, they might never recover from the reputational damage. Young quarterbacks won't trust this system. Agents won't want their clients here. And fans? Fans are already watching closely. They've seen enough high picks fizzle out. They're tired of quarterbacks being thrown into the fire with no protection, no preparation, and no plan. So now the pressure flips, not just on Shedeur, but on the Browns themselves. Because we already know he came in under the worst possible circumstances. We know what he wasn't given. We know he was set up to fail. The question now is, will they finally help him succeed? And if he does succeed, if against all odds, he leads this team, finds his rhythm, and starts to win, everything changes. Suddenly, it's not Stefanski salvaging another season. It's Shadur Sanders owning the moment without excuses. It's a rookie quarterback who was thrown into a crumbling system and then forced the system to bend around him. That's what's on the line. That's what's hanging in the balance. Not just stats or wins, but the truth of who was really responsible for what happened in Baltimore. And who's got the nerve to take control of what happens next? 8 games. That's all. And for Shadur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns, it might just be everything.